what we need is an infrastructure that enables the United States to be the most efficient, most productive, and most flexible system in the world. And I emphasize in part flexibility because I agree with Governor Rendell. You've got to think on scale, and if you think on scale, the truth is you don't know the world 30 years from now. And many of your projects have to be designed in a way that they're continuously evolving and continuously modifying as they go through the evolution of technology. But you can't have the most productive society in the world if you have a collapsing, obsolete infrastructure system. So I want to offer, just as a framework, 8 key principles to a 21st century infrastructure system. The first is we need to fundamentally rewrite the Budget Act. No American thinks they buy houses on annual appropriations. No American invests in going to college for a 1-year payback. I mean, the American public actually understands capital investing. It's the government which artificially constrains itself. So the number 1 goal has to be a new capital budget. The number 2 goal has to be very large mega projects that arouse the nation. I would argue, if we're going to be bold, then all trains ought to be in the 110-mile range, which we should not think of as high speed. That's a medium-speed train. And then let's go ahead and be really bold and go head-to-head with the Chinese in developing and implementing maglev trains that move at 280, 300, and 320 miles an hour. And you suddenly change all sorts of equations about how this country operates. The third principle I would argue is for things that are not mega projects, decentralize them to state and local decisions, get them out of Washington. Let me give you a specific example. I've co-authored 2 novels about World War II. From Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941 to victory over Japan in August of 1945 is 44 months. In 44 months, we mobilized the nation, sweep across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, defeat Germany, sweep across the Pacific, defeat Japan in 3 years and 8 months. It recently took 23 years to add a 5th runway to the Atlanta airport. Now, you're not going to get the American people to sustain support for an infrastructure system whose regulatory bureaucracy and litigation process is mindless. Fourth, wherever possible, we should involve the private sector, and when possible, we should incentivize the private sector to actually build the projects. Fifth, when possible, shift to user fees rather than tax increases. The fact is, all the polling indicates if you want to help with suburban congestion, suburbanites are very prepared to have a user fee to get them places faster. They understand the time value of money. And in virtually every poll I've seen, there's a very substantial margin that favors user fees over taxes. And I think with modern electronic technology, you can do it without toll booths. Sixth, I think that it is very important that we learn the lessons of incompetence. People have an instinctive belief that if you can't do it competently, they don't want to give you the money. 7, we really do need a substantial investment, and one of the things I most supported in a stimulus package I generally objected to was the investment in smart grids. We have to have a fundamental rethinking of our electric system, and particularly if we end up going to electric cars, as was announced in the loans yesterday. You know, the electric cars are going to draw electricity. The electricity is going to come through the grid. We had better have a lot more robust and a lot more sophisticated grid if we're going to go that way. I'm very much in favor of that. And finally, I think we have to have an energy infrastructure investment comparable to the transportation investment, whether it's green coal plants or it's nuclear power plants or it's enhanced oil recovery through using pipelines that take carbon dioxide and re-inject them. There are a number of things we can do. That will be a substantial part of any kind of infrastructure. It's not just transportation. Let me just close this with what I think is the central issue that I'm prepared to debate both with liberals and conservatives, but probably I'm of somewhat greater value in debating it with conservatives. You can't talk about American national security in the long run without a fundamental redevelopment of this country economically. It is not possible. And you can't talk about a competitive American economy without a dramatically more robust and more modern infrastructure. We need a momentum in the next 2 or 3 years that's very large, and this economy is going to call for the kind of investments we're describing if we're going to get back to job creation and get back to economic growth within a world market.